Welcome into episode 500 of the Coach Steve Show, not part of the Geek Corner or anything. The Coach Steve Show that we've kept track of. This is number 500. That is a lot of episodes, a lot of recording, but this is number 500, which is a great mark in this podcast. So I've had a lot of fun. It's all over the place, but having fun. So make sure you guys like and subscribe in honor of 500. Follow and rate on Apple and iTunes and Spotify. Check out all the affiliates in the description below. Check out all the other videos. There's something there for everybody. So check all that out. Today, for the 500th episode, we're going to talk about Illinois basketball. We're going to talk about Ty Rodgers. We're going to talk about Ty Rodgers. Then we're going to talk about this podcast called the Sleepers Podcast because they had some words to say about Ty Rodgers' comments and about Illinois. And we're going to show what the clip was as they talk about it. Then they backtrack. Then they want Illinois basketball players to come on and talk. So it was a way for them to maybe get some guys on the podcast instead of just reaching out to them like the rest of us and emailing, said people and just say, hey, you guys want to come on the podcast? That's the normal way to do it. So Ty Rodgers was interviewed. It was a podcast or just interviewed. I can't remember exactly what it was. And the first thing was Illinois needs a point guard. And it was brought up last season, during the season, how maybe Ty Rodgers could end up being the guy, being a point guard. And, with the people leaving that could play point guard this year, he was young last year. And with the transfer portal and everything else, it looks like he may have to play some point guard. I necessarily didn't see it right when it first was talked about, but then as the season went on, I saw his ball handling. I saw what type of defense he could play. It looks like he might be the point guard. And I think if he becomes maybe not full-time point guard, because again, Terrence Shannon can bring the ball up, but he just can't do it every time. He's a good off-the-ball guy. But when you want someone to maybe take charge of it, if he's going to go to practice and say, I'm going to take charge, I'm going to be the point guard, I'm going to learn how to do this, I am coming back. Coach Underwood, please help me get to this point. That's a good step. That's exactly what you want. You want a guy to come in with some type of leadership there and say, fine, nobody else wants to do it, I'm going to do it. And again, not saying Terrence Shannon is not going to do it, not saying some of these guys couldn't bring the ball up. You don't necessarily need a true point guard to bring the ball up. If you inbound it very quickly, get the ball up and start running whatever motion type of offense that, your offense that you have, that's what you need. But if he's going to tell Coach Underwood, hey, you need a point guard, I'm your guy, no matter what. I'm the guy that can bring the ball up. I'm the guy that can get us into these situations because I believe in you. I stayed. Let's do this. And so if that's qualities that you want. And then as the season's going to go on, lean on Coleman Hawkins, lean on Terrence Shannon, lean on Dame Danger, lean on Harris, lean on these guys, new transfer guys that have come in. They can bring the ball up as well. So maybe not necessarily a true point guard will not necessarily be the full downfall if anything bad happens because you do have guys who bring the ball up. But, basically he said he wants to be the point guard. Well, then the thing that everybody is talking about is they were just talking to him, and this is what Ty Rodgers had to say. It was talking about culture from last year to this year. And the culture, again, it's a word that is thrown around a lot. What do you mean by culture? And I have a podcast episode all about culture. Go listen to it. It's what is culture? We talk about the definition of culture. We talk about the different types of culture. I come at it from a coach's standpoint, not a fan standpoint, because from a fan standpoint, do you understand what culture really is? Every coach has their own culture. Every coach, I would say, probably has 60, 70% the same culture. So what Coach Underwood does is probably the exact same as Tom Izzo. It's the exact same of Coach Calipari. It's probably the same. They go about it, though, differently. That's where the difference comes in. But go listen to the thing on culture. So the whole culture thing, the culture is the standard. So if Coach Underwood's standards is, I'm going to coach you hard, I'm going to love you hard, I am going to say things to the public because I believe in holding you to the standard. I believe in trying to get the best out of you. I believe in doing this. That's what he's going to do. He's not afraid to call himself out. He's not afraid to call his coaches out, quote unquote, calling out. Or is he just truthful? And that's how he is. And he seems to me from the outside looking in, coaches everybody the same. So if he coaches everybody the same, tries to reach people differently, that's how it is. And older guys seem to stay, and older guys seem to gravitate towards that. What does that say about the younger generation? Who knows? That's a whole other topic. But here's what Ty Rodgers said. I will say that my first year, it wasn't the culture that the coaching staff talked about. Honestly, I really didn't know what the culture was. But this year, it really feels like we're putting something together. And then says all the guys they brought in, they're good human beings. Some of the guys we had last year weren't. So those two things, especially that last one, people are taking it and running with it. If you just read it and you don't really look at the question that was asked of him and everything else, you're going to sit there and say, well, he's talking bad about those players. When in reality, you're not talking bad about the players. You're talking about the locker room. You're talking about the basketball side. And, he was simply stating that if you want to talk about culture, we could say that, but he was talking about like the bondness of the locker room, the teammates of the locker room. Because you saw sometimes it didn't mesh, but it necessarily wasn't yelling at each other and arguing and everything else. But he's just looking at the players they brought in. And if there's a big difference between the players that were transferred in and Coleman Hawkins and Terrence Shannon coming back, if it feels different, he's going to say, hey, you know what? Feels a lot different. He communicated it directly, just like Coach Underwood. So people took that and ran with it. He could make comments about himself. He could have sat there and said, I'm this, I'm that. No, he talked about the whole team and how it's going to look. He could have said, hey, I didn't like some of the guys last year. They were my teammates. They weren't like he could have said a bunch of stuff. But ultimately, he's just stating what it felt like. So people took it and ran with it. And there's this podcast, which apparently I've never heard of, but apparently some have. And it's called the Sleepers Podcast. And it's about 2 minutes, saw it on Twitter. And they talk about Ty Rodgers in Illinois, and they have some things to say. So let's talk about exactly what they were doing and talk about exactly how wrong a lot of it was. So let's look at this podcast called the Sleepers Podcast. So let's listen to what they had to say.
It's honest. It's refreshing to hear honesty like that. It was a little shocking for me to hear the words. We had some bad people. Sky Clark's gone. Jaden Epps is gone. RJ Melendez is gone. Matthew Meyer is gone. The funny part of this quote is that you don't know who he's talking about, but it could apply to almost all of them.
What positive outcomes really come from throwing these guys technically under the bus? I'm not a fan of shitting on people when they're out the door. Like Kyle Neptune shitting on Cam Whitmore as he's out the door.
So the first part, let's just dive in. I love how the first guy said it's refreshing to hear this, but then he I don't like the comments. It's crazy to hear. And then this guy's like, I'm not a fan of talking about people as they leave. And again, you could take the comments as this big group, but is he talking about one person, two people? Is he just talking about overall? So this guy's assuming that he's talking about all of them as they're gone. So they're just taking this and saying this. It gets better, though.
Shitting on these guys that left the program, like, yeah, maybe they were bad people. Maybe you weren't, and maybe they did affect things. Everyone in the program probably knows that. Why does everyone else have to know that? It's a pattern now. Every single year, guys leave, and they get shitted on the way out the door. Right now, Illinois' culture, if you really want to boil it down to what it is, it's players come in, players leave, players that leave get shit on once they leave.
Okay, so this guy throws that word around. He says the Illinois culture. I want to ask this guy from the Sleepers Podcast. I don't know who you are. You don't know who I am. I'm sure your podcast is bigger than mine. I really don't care. Tell me what the definition of culture is. Tell me exactly what a culture means. Tell me exactly what Coach Underwood's culture is. Tell me how your culture would affect if you were coaching, because you probably don't. Now, I can't fully say that because I don't know who you are. My assumption is you don't coach. So tell me what culture means. Then he says Illinois' culture is that people leave. Yes, people have left Illinois. People have left other teams. So why are you saying Illinois' culture is people leave, people come, and then when they leave, they talk about them? I don't recall people leaving fully talking about them and everything else. This is one of the first times I've heard certain people talk about people that left for the first time. So where's your factual evidence of this is what happens? And I do recall, what about Terrence Shannon Jr. and Coleman Hawkins deciding to come back? What about Kofi Coburn deciding to come back? What about Ayo Dosunmu decided to play for a while? What about all these other guys that had stayed when they could have done this? What about the people that come in? If that's exactly what the culture is, why do people even show up to play? So again, tell me the definition of culture, please, and have some factual things to back up if you're going to talk about Illinois at all. So let's continue.
I associate Illinois basketball right now with talent, drama, chaos, and around a 32 exit.
Okay, so he says talent. Yes, Illinois is talented. Chaos and drama. Where's the chaos? Yeah, we've had some point guards and people leave. So does other institutions. Michigan, he's about to say something about Michigan, but Michigan had Hunter Dickinson leave, and he apparently is the best basketball player in the whole country. People are leaving because of the transfer portal. So that happens. Where's the drama? Because I don't hear about, unless they know a report that I don't know about, and I like to think that me being the resident in Illinois, because I live in Illinois, and the guy that grew up next to Champaign-Urbana, and the guy that listens to things on Illinois and tries to read on it, I didn't know about drama. I didn't know about chaos, because if my mind serves correctly, they've won a regular season Big Ten championship, and they've won the Big Ten tournament championship. Now you're talking about a round of 32 exit. Yeah, that's the next step that we got to get over. So that part, hats off, whatever, that's fine. But the rest of it, how do you know? Do you watch Illinois every single game? I don't know. I don't think you do. But let's continue.
That is, and beating Michigan. I want to be clear. I'm not saying Ty Rodgers is wrong.
Okay, you're saying he's not wrong, but we're going to talk about everything he just said.
No, like you said, I respect it.
Maybe the guy.
I respect it. They're saying he's not wrong, and they respect it. But then you just, at the beginning, I hate when guys talk crap about people and they go out the door. Well, I'm not saying he's wrong, though. Like, I respect it, though, but I hate it. I think while you guys were talking, you realized, I don't know what I'm talking about, or you just started to regret what you were saying, and then you start to think about it, and you're like, well, what he said really isn't that bad. I'm kind of wrong here, but let's continue.
Guys in that locker room love that Ty Rodgers did this. It's a fork in the ground moment. Ty's clearly asserting himself as a leader. It's pretty wild to me. A guy that averaged 3 points a game last year is the one saying this.
So you're like, oh, wait a minute. They love that he's doing this. Loves it. Then they want to go, but it's weird that the guy that averaged 3 points last year is the one that does. So then you want to go talk crap about him again.
It's the point guard now. He averaged 3 points a game last year, and he's shitting on guys.
That first game against Eastern Illinois when Ty Rodgers is flirting with a triple-double, and all I see is like, tell me this isn't Ty Rodgers, and it's like a picture of Ben Simmons like on Twitter.
I would be careful being like, we got the bad guys out. We got good people in, and now we're going to be a 30-win team.
There's a reason, like, when you type in someone's name and pull it like, yeah.
I don't think he said any of that. I don't think he said, oh, we got the bad guys out, the good guys in, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. No, he didn't say that. Are you making things up? Is there something you know that I don't know? Get your facts right.
ESPN stats, it doesn't say anything about them being good guys and bad guys.
You think Kansas cares that Hunter Dickinson ain't the best guy?
No.
I don't think so. Open door to any Illinois players that want to come set the story straight here.
Only if you're a good guy, though.
Every day.
Right there. He goes, any Illinois guy wanted to come and set the facts straight, but only if you're a good guy. So first of all, these are buffoons that probably somehow have a bigger podcast than me and other people that I know that have podcasts that deserve bigger podcasts than what these two buffoons have put out there for people to hear. So people like to talk to be heard. And again, I'm wrong on a lot of things. I probably put out podcasts just to be heard, but I actually try to read things and see if it's factual, try to give an opinion. Maybe there's people out there that have the same opinion and everything else, but these buffoons are trying to get Illinois guys on the podcast. And I almost guarantee you, if I try to get Ty Rodgers on, I might get him before you and address this, because you're using this to try to get them on. you talk about this culture and you don't understand what culture is. So understand what it is first. And understand that if you don't understand how a locker room works, you don't know what they're talking about. And guess what? Coach Underwood's going to probably sit there and tell you the same thing, like, hey, and it's not necessarily you're talking about maybe them as people, but maybe you're talking about them as leaders. Maybe he could have said it differently. He's talking about leaders. I do that too. I'll say something generalized when I actually mean this, and I probably should have said, things a lot more direct. I should have said things that actually mean this because your mind's going. And if you're in the moment, Ty Rodgers is still young, from a player's perspective when you're looking at this. So maybe it doesn't click. Maybe he's talking about, just good people in the locker room, like bringing us together. And he's talking about this culture right now, or this group right now. We've seemed to be very positive. There's something special being built up here. So these buffoons want to go out and and I love how they talk bad about him, agree with him, talk bad about him, try to get on podcast. I don't get it. So what he said wasn't necessarily that bad. He didn't signal anybody out. He could have been talking about one person, because you notice when one person left early on in the year, things got a little better. Not saying one thing or another. Talking about the people got transferred in. Maybe they're better leaders than the ones they had. We don't know what goes on in that locker room. We don't know what's being said behind closed doors unless it gets reported. We don't know what was said on the way out for some people. So all we can do is sit here and speculate. So for those people right there, I don't know if you're Illinois fans for that Sleepers podcast. I don't know. If you are, cool. Maybe you need to pay attention more than ever before. Maybe you need to pay attention to things more. I don't think you are. I don't think you're true Illinois fans and actually watch every single game, read everything that is done. And that's why I have to be careful sometimes talking about other teams, because I have to understand. I have to try to read it. I have to try to listen to other people, other shows, and make sure I'm going to say things right then for my own opinion. So make sure before you jump on something, if you're going to talk about Illinois, make sure you read every article. Make sure you watch the games, as many as you could. Not everyone, but most. You just don't pay attention to Illinois until we get closer to NCAA, which I don't pay attention to a lot of teams to then either. But that's why I don't talk about all of them. I talk about Illinois. So know what you're saying before anything. What Ty Rodgers said wasn't that bad. Understand what's going on. Understand what the team was going through before you start talking about that. Welcome to the 500th episode. That will wrap this up. Make sure you like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. Follow it right on Apple and iTunes and Spotify. Check out all the affiliates in the description below. Check out all the other videos. There's something there for everybody. Lining up to get some great guests back on to talk ball, life, and everything in between. So thank you guys again for watching and or listening. This is Coach Steve, and we will see you guys next time.